Hey guys, I'm Lucas. I'm the team lead for Recall, and this is Clint. He's our lead designer, Garage, our lead engineer, and Judson, our producer and co-lead. So we're going to tell you about Recall, which is a memory productivity app that is in virtual reality. But why do you want to use it? Well, it's because we're all doing this. It's midterm season, and we're poorly equipped with paper, pencils, textbooks, and so on. But we're all just trying to do the same thing. We're taking our short-term memory and trying to convert that into long-term memory so we can use it whenever we want. So it makes sense that your brain would actually have a structure that does this specific task. It's dedicated to that. But it also does another thing. It tells you where you are in space. It has dedicated cells that tell you where key objects are around you, place cells, how you navigate through a two-dimensional grid cells, boundary cells, which tell you when you're close to a boundary, and orientation cells, which track the orientation of your head. This is all to build a spatial map of what's around you. Why would it do that? Why would it do that and memory? It makes sense if we realize that every experience that we have has one commonality. And that every experience happens in a place. Every experience happens in 3D space. That sounds kind of trivial, but it's actually very important. And knowing that, some people can do some crazy stuff with their memory, like Ben Pridemore. He can memorize 26 decks of shuffled cards after studying for an hour. That sounds crazy, right? Maybe he's a savant. Maybe he has a different brain from the rest of us. Not true. He actually, and other people, were psychoanalyzed to see what is up with their ability to memorize so much. These are competitive memory champions. And they have no difference in their brain structures. They're not more intelligent than the controls, but over 90% of them use a spatial memory mnemonic called the method of loci, in which they construct a memory palace. Now, these guys also use that same mnemonic. And in order to execute it, they have a 3D environment with a path, and along that path, they place the information that they want to remember. And they simply walk that path in their mind's eye, and the information that they want to know activates. So why are we implementing this in VR rather than, well, we want to implement this in VR because VR is extremely immersive. And we all know when it comes to memory, it's about how content engages the user. So, just to show you how immersive virtual reality can be, this guy's doing a roller coaster demo on a DK1. And his friend right at the very top gives him a little nudge. We'll see what happens. Actually thinks he's falling. His feet are on the
Looks like he is falling.
And he still thinks he's falling until they take the headset off. So now that we know the layout of the land and understand the problem, let's start talking about the game itself. What?
So we can see that VR is pretty immersive and amazing, right? So let's talk about the design a little bit. So originally, to get into this world, you put on your VR headset, and to make the project most immersive, you have headphones so you can hear it and be completely immersed. And then your journey begins. So what journey is it that we're talking about? Well, Recall is going to help you remember what you really need to know. So beforehand, let's say you have a document, and it can be any text document, for instance, a PowerPoint or Word slide, anything with text. And then we're going to split it into little slices. So for instance, if you have a PowerPoint slide with 5 slides, we can take that first slide, and we can also take the bullets within that slide. So what do we do with that information? Well, when you enter the scene, you'll be here, and those bullet points are going to be spread all throughout on little pedestals all over the place. So you have a final gate at the end, and you start here, and you, with your wireless joystick, you can just walk around the world at your leisure, and you're supposed to go to each of these nodes and see the bullet point, which could be an item, a document. There are many ways that we can find out the node, and it's going to have some information about it. And your goal is to fully take in the scene, look at the scenes, hear the music, and look at the object at that place. At the very end, you come to a little mid-test before the next scene. So you might remember this presentation. There are some objects associated with the locations that we were just at. For instance, you might remember the brain from the amphitheater. You might remember the house from the cathedral. And you might remember the video from the last place that we're in, which is the theater. Or I'm sorry, which is the forest. So with your wireless joystick, you can move up and down. And if you hit it and it's wrong, then it flashes red. If it's right, then it flashes green. And once you're at the very bottom, then this recollection gate slides down, and you're able to go on to the next scene. Now, you go through a corridor. So midway through the corridor, we actually erase the last scene, and we upload the next scene. And that's going to help out with computer processing. So then you go into the next scene, which is vastly different from the first scene. So for instance, it could be a cathedral here, or Minecraft scene, or whatever. The whole point is so that you think of it as a different location. So for our artists, we just give them a few requirements. So we told them that there has to be a beginning point, an end point, the platforms around the scene, and we also told them to keep the poly count low for graphics processing. But otherwise, we told them, yeah, free range to do whatever you want. And so, like I said, like we mentioned, we have lots of different artwork coming in. And the whole point is that this contrasting animation is going to really help you remember the text document that you uploaded. Right.
Okay, so I'll be talking about some of the tech that we have going on. So we wanted our product obviously to run on as many platforms as possible. So right now we have 3 VR builds going on simultaneously. We have a PC build for the DK2, Google Cardboard, and Gear VR. Obviously each of these has their own controllers that we need to set up. So we learned some pros and cons for each device based on what we saw. The DK2 ran very well because we were running it on our machine here, which has a great GPU, CPU. So we could handle bigger environments. But it's not a wireless experience. It doesn't let you walk around in the room. You're connected to the computer still. Google Cardboard, it obviously doesn't give full immersion. It has holes in the sides, like you don't feel like you're actually there. And it has low performance because it's also on phone. Gear VR is our 3rd device, and it was basically the middle ground of the two. You have very good immersion in the VR headset, and it's fully wireless, so you can walk around with your controller and basically do a 360 turn without feeling a tug on your head. But we had to stick to simple environments for phone purposes. So the technical challenges we saw on the phone builds were that we needed to basically lower everything. We needed less than 50,000 triangles, less than 50 draw calls per frame, limit the materials, and some things that had to do with motion sickness, such as elevation changes needed to go away, and too much turning is a problem as well in VR. So this is an example of our original environment that we got. It was an awesome Minecraft room with 300,000 polygons, and they were all in one mesh, so we couldn't do any occlusion culling, and it was great, but we couldn't run it on the phone. So then we came up with some solutions that we could actually fix. A lot of them has to do with the art, but we have some tools in Unity to lower the mesh detail, the detail of the mesh without losing the immersion factor. We used some texture atlasing, so instead of having a different material per different thing, we just have one texture atlas and have everything mapped to that UV. You bake the lighting, and then some tricks with static and dynamic batching and launching. And so this is something more realistic to what we have on the phone right now. It only has 30,000 triangles, and that's in total, so when you're in a certain place, you only see like 30K triangles maybe. Other than rendering issues, we also had some multiple environments that we needed to load into. So if you go into a new environment, we needed to additively load the next environment while the previous one was there without too much of a hiccup. So we're still investigating into the asynchronous loading and additive loading. And we also implemented the review gates, but the review gates had to be designed modular because we don't know when they submit the document how many bullet points points we're going to create, it's all automated. So the review gates had to be designed so that they could fit as many elements as we deemed necessary without looking too bad. And also controller, each VR device has a different controller, so we just needed to implement all of them.
So far you've seen all the visual aspects of the game, but the main aim of the game is to upload any kind of document and be able to generate these random environments and also be able to associate the appropriate asset with the text. So if suppose you upload a document that has 5 paragraphs and each paragraph is a topic within itself, so that topic has to become an environment. And within that paragraph, if you have like 5 or 6 sentences, you need to segment them in such a way that I think you've seen before, you have every note point, so the note point needs to get text and its relevant asset. So we literally need to create libraries of assets and they need to get some characteristics. So if suppose you're reading a mysterious topic, you can't be like in a bright environment, it would be pointless. So all this has to be completely automated. So we need to first retrieve the information and then randomly generate environments. That brings to all the big words, text mining, test analysis. This is where all the probability and linear algebra comes in. But if you think about it, if suppose you're reading a book and you're like trying to check on one particular topic, you turn towards the end of it and like look at the index. And then you go in an order, and there, for every word, you get a location. That's your page number, and that's how you pick it out. So that's something like what Google does, or anyone would do. So you need to like pick up the keywords and like try to link it back, and you need to have an index. And this should be able to retrieve that particular asset. Now, it sounds easy, but then there are a lot of factors that you might have to consider. So that brings to lexical analysis. So what the process is to convert a sequence of characters to string of tokens. Token here is an identified meaning. So we take all this. You can literally build a Lexa in a scripting language, or you can also take a Lex generator. That could be a special purpose DFA generator. And then within that, you have to like consider, like if suppose you have a text, you have like numbers. Like suppose if this was a sentence, you have a number here. But within itself, you don't really care about of and words like that. You only want to like think of the nouns or adjectives or stuff like that. So for that, you might want to like go around the proximity of a sentence. So most of us would have performed this exercise in school. Like our teachers would say, like if you want to find out the meaning of a particular word and you don't have a dictionary, what do? You would look at the words around it, try to get a sense of it, and then get a rough idea. And that idea, that's what we need to pull out from our library. So you gotta go like in the back direction. Much like that, then you have like hyphens. You need to think about punctuations. Now, literally you would think that you would cut the sentence when there's a period. But then what if you have a word like this? So in that case, let's look at the white space. Maybe that could be a solution. Like it could be an end of sentence. If there's no white space, it could be an abbreviation. So we can tweak our algorithms. So when you're crawling and you're trying to index, you can make your programs and algorithms in such a way that you can make exceptions for this. Then the stop words. This is another way, but then when you take the stop words, you need to think about sentences like this, because in this, B could be an index word. But for this, we have algorithm already. This has been in research since quite a long time. For stemming, again, here you need to like try to take out the prefixes and suffixes, but there are a few exceptions. Like here, if you have a word like this, you're trying to eliminate D and get the word. But if you have a word like this, you don't want to take out an asset that is related to past and not paste. So these are a few things that we need to take into consideration. Or root words. That could be an easy way to pull up any relevant objects. Like if suppose I say quick, you could put a timer for that as an asset. What else? So yeah, again here, if you have words like so many noun phrases, we need to think about something for that too. So the good news is that we already have softwares and applications that do this. And what we need to do is like get the right one, try to get license for it, and be able to do. That's about it. So we started with 2 people in August, then we were 5. Now we have 14 members in the team. We have given our first prototype within 1 month of our, being in this project, and we are going to be presenting the same demo at SIMT conference. SIMT stands for Society of Motion Pictures and Television Engineers. So our group was able to get a free booth as USC students. You guys should like come up on Monday to Hollywood Rose Hotel and check us out there.
So now, let's check out a quick little demo. Since our game runs on a phone, we actually switched it over to a desktop build, and Raj is going to plug us in and take you through the game really quick, or through a piece of the game.
You should take the game, I can't see.
Of course, right. You can't see.
All right.
Well, so right now our build is a proof of concept to show that if you memorize a list of information through locations, it will help you remember those objects and that information that you wanted to know. So we uploaded a grocery list as our first thing. And the idea is to scale this up to where you can upload any document and it would switch the assets to be matching to whatever information you just uploaded. Now the interesting aspect of that is that you're going to run out of rooms very quickly if you do them one by one. So, second on our grocery list is milk. We like breakfast. We're also going to get cheese, and some bread, some butter to go with our bread. Once you get up to our view gate, you'll see the location, and then a little asset next to it that you have to match to each location. So you do one wrong one. No, you already did. That's good. He's too good. He's done this too many times. And we load to the next room. And now we're in the meat room. We get ribs and fish. And the idea of procedurally generating the environments afterwards is that we would use permutations of different objects that would be placed on predefined locations. We go for one false. There we go. So it's a relatively easy memory game. You can kind of click straight through it, but the idea is just to associate these objects with the information. So we can stop there, or we can keep going.
And debug super speed.
And
recall those facts.
yeah, do you know the list by now, Raj?
I hope so right now.
So through different permutations of a list of assets, we can procedurally generate environments to have many rooms, and so you can upload any document, and it will be different every single time. We're also going to do that with music, have different tracks that would become permutations of a track, and so you would be listening to different music every single time as well. So those were our plans for the future. Are also text processing, procedural environment generation, like I was telling you about. Sinjin, we need Houdini to get that going. Once we have that, then we want to really prove that this works with psychological tests and show that you can learn a set of information using this tool better than a control group, which is just using a piece of game. And then from those tests, we can learn how to refine the game to make it more memorable and improve it thereafter. So that's recall.
Yes, are there plans to create some kind of online repository where users can share mind palaces they've already built?
The online repository may become a necessity as this game gets larger and larger. We would need a huge asset of library, or a huge library of assets to procedurally generate rooms. So it wouldn't make sense to have someone download gigabytes of data onto their phone. So we would have a cloud server that does all of that. So yes, it would be easy thereafter to have, if you have one document and you've made a room, to give that same set of rooms for that document to someone else, so you can both talk about, hey, what did you see when you were next to that pond in the very beginning? Oh right, it was ribs. And yeah, do you have any more questions?
Do you have a website?
We do have a website,
What's it called?
recallvr.com.
Okay.
Yeah,
You can continue to ask questions.
Anders?
So first of all, I'd like to respectfully disagree that text processing sounds easy. Sounds super hard. But so you're saying that you want to take like different assets from different areas and stuff like that and put it together. So if you have, for example, 4 things on the list, how are you going to make sure that this is a different one, this is a different one, this is a different one, this is a different one? If they're all like, let's say, okay, let me take my point. You had, for example, you had the big room at the beginning where there is like grass and stuff like that. If you take one from another room and one from another room and then 2 from the same green room, might like they be like, are you accounting for things like that to happen, or because they might be similar? Is my point. Like the last 2 objects, because they come from the same room, might be a bit similar compared to the other 2.
The point is you're trying to group them.
The way it works is like when you upload a document, it's supposed to read every word of your document, right? And then based on that, as per the topic's nature, you need to generate an environment. And each environment already has a defined path, and it has its own known points. So you need to segment the paragraph or whatever to those locations. And when you're trying to get the assets for it, so once it's segmented, each line or whatever, again you read through it, try to get a context, and then based off that, you try to see which is the most relevant asset that you have in your library, and then pick that out.
So just to build on what Anders is talking about, from his statement, I was inferring that Anders is concerned that there might be 2 areas in a given environment that are so similar that they're indistinguishable. So for example, you're going through a parking lot and you pass by 3 red minis. Well, you pass by the first red mini, the second red mini, the third red mini. Well, they're all red minis. So instead of maybe red, then yellow, then blue. So I think that I do see that as a possible issue. One thought might be, well, the position of the minis might be enough, but do you have plans to collect data that will give you feedback that will demonstrate definitively if a specific environment is working or not working? So for example, if you have this parking lot environment, you might get data back that says, wow, people consistently can't remember anything in the southwest corner of the environment. I wonder why that is. And then you check out the data and you realize, oh, there's 3 red minis in a row.
There's actually a lot of information, a lot of research going into the method of loci and proving why it's effective, trying to find out why it's so effective. And there isn't really much, there's a lot of data to show that you can actually do any environment, like whether it's a real room that you've been in like your house, versus a virtual environment that you learned on a two-dimensional screen, or even in virtual reality, they're all equally effective, as long as you, well, the virtual reality one would be more immersive, but if you really study a room in a video game versus if you know the place, it's better. Knowing the place in real life isn't better than knowing the place in the video game. But the key factor that does matter is that the room is irregular. So a parking structure is very regular. That's a bad spot to do this. A library is very regular. Everything is books. Bad spot to do it. But a forest that is winding, interesting, and each spot is unique, that's a good spot to do it.
Okay.
And what you consider is just general play testing. So for instance, we're going to take research on how far away the platform should be, whether they remembered at the beginning of the door or at the end, whether the level's too big, you know.
Okay.
So right now,
But are you going to be accumulating all that data?
yeah, so right now we actually are per environment storing, like when you do the review gate, like right now that's our only metric, how many times they got something wrong. So that kind of is a telltale sign that something's wrong with this environment. So we're storing that, and then right now we're using it for a grade at the end, like how well you remember
Okay.
stuff.
Well, I would encourage you to
keep
think about how you can improve your data collection and try to expand on the different types of data that you can collect to broaden your ability to examine issues from more than one perspective. For any other reason, it could significantly contribute to study of the method of loadout.
Actually, for VRSC demo day, the time when we first showcased our prototype, we had a feedback form, and I think that helped us to understand where we were going wrong, and whatever data we collected from that, based on that, we had to give a new set of instructions to the artist. And then after that, a lot of PhD students and other master students who work on VR had come in and gave us a lot of advice on how to correct the rendering, frame rate, and stuff.
Excellent.
So you've been talking about the procedural generation, but you're also saying you're pulling a lot of assets from the database. So are you procedurally generating the environment from pre-rendered assets, or also procedurally generating assets in your procedural environments?
Well, what we would be doing is we would have assets with a couple of parameters, like their sizes, and we would have a basic layer on the very beginning, and you could have like a spline change its shape in the very beginning, and you can place assets along that new spline with random distances between each other, random orientations, random sizes. And so through these many permutations, you can give the illusion of a new environment from a set of assets that are correlated.
So if you have a situation where you want to learn, for example, a mathematical proof, a lot of things what you do in a mathematical proof is you make statements and you derive things and then you annotate them to be like, this is size number 1, number 2, and stuff like that. And then when you justify your logic, you usually reference these annotations. You having a way of you being able to do that. So like when I need to remember the justification, I need to remember a reference to something else I already remember.
That's something for next semester.
Okay.
Maybe the summer.
Going back in series is actually, there's a person whom I met, he's actually doing research on that with WBML Lab. And he did approach us like, did you guys work on this thing? And I was like, no, it makes sense to, yeah, we still have to scratch up with it.
Alrighty. Let's recall.
Thank you.